Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here where we're continuing the coverage of the recent ongoing tournament in Chennai, the Chennai Grandmasters tournament, the second edition. And as mentioned, there's a lot of top players involved there fighting uh, for top prizes. And currently, as it stands, Arjun Erigaisi is leading the field, a clear point ahead, and with his recent win against none other um, than Amin Tabatabai. He They were enjoying first, but now is a clear point ahead. So in this game, we're doing the coverage of how it went. So without further ado, Amin Tabatabai then starts. Arjun responds with e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop to c4. We're now in the Italian game. Two knights defense. So very often we'd see knight g5 ideas. Um, Attacking on f7, but at this level, not too common. Here we'd often see the standard d3 idea or just simply castles. D3, in modern bishop's opening of the Gucci piano, as it's called more affectionately. Bishop c5 then by Arjun. Very standard setup. Castles by white and d6, c3. So attempting then to perhaps go d4 and ideas of knight bd2, rook e1, very standard knight f1 in most of these structures. So still in very much uh, well-known territory. Black's got ideas of h6 and a6 with the bishop dropping back, other bishop coming out perhaps. But we'll notice that Arjun has not castled yet. And perhaps common themes that perhaps a pawn storm might come, as actually happens in this game. And this is a theme actually much popularized by Kramnik in the 2000s with this pawn push. There's a very nice game Kramnik had in the early 2000s with this queen e7, queen f8, um, queen b7 ideas, and rook g8, where the pawns roll down the board and black does not then obviously then castle kingside. So let's see how Arjun responds with then ideas of perhaps dropping the bishop back soon to a7, just stopping also thoughts and ideas of b4, right? Okay, a4, h6, then also stopping ideas of bishop g5, rook e1, and then bishop to a7. So it's now clear Arjun's intentions is to keep pieces on the board and to have a full-blown battle. Arjun eyeing this f2 sensitive square. Let's see how Tabatabai responds. b4 is then played anyway, and g5. So this is now the intention set. Arjun wants to go into a full-blown battle with the g5 idea. Maybe g5, h5 coming, and it's clear that, or most likely then, in such setups, that black is not castling kingside in this game. Will black even castle? I don't know. Let's find out. Bishop to e3. And he has considered this right inaccuracy. Um, and after bishop takes e3, this position has not been reached before. So here you could either go f takes e with pawn capturing, which doesn't do that much, or you can go rook takes on e3. Either or, it's slightly better for white still. So let's see how these players maneuver in this uh, uncharted territory. We have g4. So Arjun's carrying out his plan, just rolling down the pawns on the g file and trying to apply pressure, as much pressure, because we see now white king is castled. Black's ideas then would be, uh, well, seemingly to maybe slide the rook to g8, maybe get the queen in on the g file or h files, and then gradually perhaps then bring the bishop out and bring the other rook into the attack as well. Okay, knight to e1. And yet the Batabai took some time to think, perhaps then considering calculating between knight f to d2 and knight to e1. Both are fine. Knight to e1 then, and h5. So now we see then that Erigaisi is pushing and rolling down those pawns on the h file. Stay hydrated, guys. d4, striking in the center. So it's important. A nice theme we see here, and it's very pragmatic play from these grandmasters is that one grandmaster is attacking on one side of the board on one flank. So then to generate some counter play, the other player is attacking in the center. It's very common also that you could attack on the other flank, right? But then Tabatabai says, no, I'm going for the center since you're attacking on the flank. Let's see who breaks through first. H4. So now we know we're getting a very dynamic attacking game, and it's still very equal for both sides. So both sides are playing this very perfectly or very well so far. And then now we see a slight inaccuracy of bishop to e2. Here it's recommended that you go knight d2 perhaps, and maybe swinging this knight over to f1. But the move order is crucial here because let's say now knight to d2, we get uh, h3, you continuing your attack in the center, knight e7, and then if you really like, you just shut it off with g3, and if you want to play it passively, maybe knight f1, but there's no need for that right now, depending on how the game would progress. But right now, it wouldn't perhaps be too good. It's slightly better than for black then in that position because f5 ideas come about. But it's a good resource to have in case if the structure had to change, right? Because in the game, knight f1 actually does occur, and that actually ends up being a very big mistake. But now, as we see after white makes this inaccuracy of bishop to e2, black makes another mistake by playing queen to e7. Objectively, this is not the best as suggested is then just g4. You can take. In fact, you don't even have to, but if takes, you just go h3. That's fine, right? Black does have ideas of going bishop takes on h3 eventually, and it's a good sack, but played correctly, white doesn't have anything. And we could even assess this if we turn it on. Perhaps not right now, it's perhaps not sound because it's quite equal, but you get this rook in and quite balanced. Bishop f1, and you just drop your rook back, and the game goes on. White is slightly better. He is up a piece for 2 pawns, but black on the other hand has some nice play. Ideas of maybe swinging the knight down, uh, let's say to h5, maybe queen sliding in. There is an open h file, so nice pressure. But bishop g2 just stops this any ideas of attacking on h1, and but h2 is still available, and the game just goes on. Right. But as we progress, then queen e7, d5, the knight has to drop back to b8, drops to b8. Here the engine suggests this a5 move, and a5 is a very engine-like move. Um, it's very unlikely. It's very counterintuitive that someone would play this a5 move because in our mind, as we perceive the board right now, all the action is around here, right? And this side. So it's natural that a move would take place on this side. Even c4 would be suggested in some of these lines, but it's understandable why we would perceive that okay, the action's happening here, so perhaps let's bring our pieces closer to the king, as we are always taught. To protect your king, you need pieces generally close by, right? And still, white's still better here. So after knight to d2, we get this queen to f8 idea, with the intention of going bishop, queen to h6 or queen to g7, and just continuing rolling down these pawns, right? White then has to strike with the c4 idea. And the reason being c4, let's say c4, queen h6, you get this rook a3 idea. And this rook a3 idea is crucial not only because you're developing your rook, but it's also helping out for the defense on the third rank after black gets these pawns rolling, as it will be important. And also c4 is important because you are also allowing, let's say, maybe a sample line, let's say bishop d7, you get c5. And now you're seriously generating some counterplay here. If we turn this on, you'd see then, yes, white would be standing slightly better. You could even argue close to winning then, because now king e7 has to be played, and you're just bringing your pieces into the attack. If g3, that's fine. You can go f or h3, yes. Or even if takes here, you can just take back with a king, and you're fine. Even if we went this way, right? Okay, now it's suddenly equal, and it's important here perhaps not to go h3 because of this bishop takes. Because if you take back, you're suddenly in a world of trouble with attacks, the h2 square being vulnerable, as well as h1, and you'd have to now play rook to g3, king h1 in, and knight takes on e4, and then the white king is going on a walk, capturing the rook, you up material. So this is not good. So it's very crucial to time those pushes, right? So after this, knight b8, knight to d2, queen to f8, a mistake again, an inaccuracy, but now knight to f1, and perhaps here white was seeing ghosts, thinking that this is very powerful, which is natural, and you're keeping a lot of defenders around. But now we'll see that white becomes quite passive, right? Queen to h6, tackling this rook on e3, because with the pawn push coming, this rook might be vulnerable. c4 is played now, and now we get this push g3, considered slightly inaccurate as well. But because white's perceiving, excuse me, these threats, they're just capturing and playing like the most logical moves, h3, which is still fine. And the guys has got ideas of capturing on h3, and it looks very venomous and scary, right? So let's see how it progress. Knight b to d7, bringing out the knight, rerouting the knight to f8, bringing it to g6. Then we have c5, correctly timed. Ah, apologies. And let's go back. Let's go back. Knight b to d7 correctly, c5 correctly timed. Knight f8, and now we have c takes d, c takes d, and again rook a3, very important to guard on this third rank. Super, super important, getting defenses out, and at the same time, very classy move, lifting your rook, developing the rook. It's even ideas perhaps of rook a3, rook c3 just now, queen c1, and attacking on the c file, right? And also simultaneously queen c1 will defend the rook on e3. So let's see how the game progresses. Queen to c1, yes, and now this bishop takes h3, which is considered slightly inaccurate. It's a sack, but after g takes and after g takes h3 and knight to g6, Erigais is just pouncing and trying to develop his pieces, getting the pieces close to the enemy camp. And these knights are dancing. They look very ominous, right? Rook takes on g3, which is fine. And now inviting, asking Erigaisi, do you want to trade queens with me? And let's go into an endgame. Erigaisi says, not right now. Rather bring the knight to a nice outpost on f4, applying pressure, more pressure on h3. Let's see how the game progresses. Queen to e3, knight takes on h3, rook takes, and now we have a queen trade, and we're in this level endgame. So let's assess. In this endgame, we have a rook and three minor pieces and four pawns versus two rooks, a minor piece, and five pawns. Objectively, yes, it is equal, but if the Batabai can develop the army, get it in, obviously not the b5 with the bishop, you just lose a pawn. But if they can, let's say they can ideally get the pieces out, get the knight, you know, you could argue white could stand better. If black can get the rook in and the knight in, perhaps this knight to f4 again, ideas, it could be black that's standing better. It's all about who's going to develop first and the quickest, right? 3, rook to c8, ideas of sliding this rook down perhaps, rook to b1, yes, rook to c3 happens. There's now pressure on this f3 bishop. Knight to d2 defending on f3. King to e7, a5, and now knight to d7, attempting to push this pawn down the f5 pawn, thrusting it forward eventually. King to f2, knight to f8, and now we have b5. Erigaisi ignores that pawn and continues bringing the knight out, ideally aiming for the f4 square, which we'll see how important this is in the endgame, getting these outpost knights. Crucial, crucial, crucial. And we'll see how Erigaisi exploits this, right? Okay, b takes a, it's important to recapture, otherwise that the pass pawn just runs to victory or undoubles, and we all know that two pass pawns on the seventh, one is bound to promote, the rook cannot stop that, right? B takes a, and now bishop to g2, the rook must move back to h6 as they do. And now the question is here, how do we pick up this pawn, right? Do you go for the check first, or do you pick it up immediately or you go for b6 and then pick it up immediately? Here Tabatabai plays a check first to gain some time, perhaps, with the increments, king to f8, and now rook to b6. So that a6 pawn is bound to fall. So Eric Gaisi needs to generate play very quickly as well, because this a6, a5 pawn is running, right? Knight to f4, that outpost is achieved. So now rook takes on a6. Rook to a3, getting behind the pass pawn, also a very crucial principle in the endgame. Rook to a8 check, and you slide the king to g7. a6, not the problem. Erigaisi goes rook to a2, attacking this knight on d2. So now knight to f3 defends. We call this knight's help, when the one knight helps the other. Very strong defensive idea, or even offensive idea in certain positions. Knights are very strong helping each other out, but will we see a vulnerability in this? Will these two knights cause the game to collapse? Let's find out. f5 is now played. And now we can see Erigaisi thrusting the pawns forward. The game is equal in this position, but both players are under severe time pressure. I believe Erigaisi had about 8 minutes here, and Tabatabai has about 5 minutes. And we all know that with these top grandmasters, between the moves of um, 39 to 42, 43, mistakes are most prone to happening or before a time control is reached, right? So let's see what happens. Rook to a7 check, king goes to f8, rook to a8, king to g7 check, rook to a7. And now the question is, if Erigaisi goes back to f8, it's just a draw. They call it a day. Everyone goes home. Everyone's happy. Very good game. Very dynamic game. But here Erigaisi says, no, I'm going king to f6. I am sensing something more here. Is there something more? And in this position, Erigaisi Tabatabai blunders the whole game by playing bishop to f1. The only move that keeps him alive in this position is this rook to d7, right? Rook to d7, attacking on the d6, and after captures, then bishop f1, attacking the rook on the 6 and dislodging the rook, right? Because if now rook to b6, you simply get knight b6. There isn't much to. If rook to a6, well, you could just capture on d6, and white is totally winning now. So this is why this it's important to first go rook to 7, because now after bishop to f1, it's suddenly totally lost because you're gaining time with f takes on e. And the problem here is now, after rook to d7, you're just not in time because you're just picking up this knight on f3. And you think, okay, this comes with check. No, you just run your king down to g5. And then after takes, this pawn cannot run, right? Even if you go there, it's not the problem. You're just picking up the other pawn, and this is now totally winning, right? And you're picking up the knight too. There's nothing for white to do here. So Tabatabai had the right idea, but played it in the wrong order, the wrong move order. And perhaps in this set, in this position here on move 40, 41 with this repetition, there was a psychology involved here, where Higashi doesn't immediately go to f6 and only on move um, 45 goes to king f6, because if perhaps king f6 immediately and not this repetition of king f8 first, king f8 and back to g7, it could be argued that Bataba would have played this, as was said on the stream between Sagar Shah sir and the commentary team. Um, so yeah, the small nuances in these games that could influence, because also that takes time away because the opponent's thinking, does he want to go for the draw? Does he want to call it a day? And tricking them maybe with twofold repetition and not threefold. That's like, okay, now I have to shift my mindset again to playing, right? And this is what you could argue could have happened. So now we have f takes e, bishop to c4, rook to c2, and this is a very powerful move, right? Because there's attack on a2 here. If Erigaisi, and it's important to keep this rook on the second rank because this knight is pinned to the king, cannot move at all, and this knight is attacked by the pawn. So either way, one knight's falling here, right? Or maybe both even. But bishop c4 is a very nifty move because if Erigaisi doesn't find the correct move, the attack sort of turns around, right? So let's say Erigaisi played there, it's suddenly a draw again because of rook b7, and this pawn's running again because now if rook c2, the pawn's running and there's no time, you cannot go back to a2 because the bishop would capture that on c4, right? So this is why in this position it's so important to go rook to c2, because now if rook to b7, then you're just capturing the pawn, right? And if ideas of a7, not a problem. You're picking this up with check, and then you simply just give rook to e2 mate, rook to e2 check, bishop takes e2, and yes, you could even allow this pawn promotion, not a problem. Your promotion is coming with a check, the rook's dropping to h3, king to g4, and then your simple queen 2 could even go queen to g3, and that's mate, right? So the timing of this move is so important, and this is why it's so good that Erigaisi finds this rook to c2 instead of rook b2 first, because after rook to c2, rook to d7, Erigaisi is not worried about the d6 pawn anymore now, because this knight's falling, this knight's falling, and even with a check, well, which Tabatabai does not play, king to e3, the pawns are falling, e takes f, this knight is weak as well, the pawn could even push down, and in this position Tabatabai just went bishop, knight to e4, check through in the check, king slides to uh, f5, and bishop, knight takes with check on d6, king drops to g6, there's no checks available right now, okay, there is this, of course, bishop to d3, but you just take with a knight. After bishop f1, Erigaisi ends the game in style with this rook to e2. And let's see why it's so powerful, right? If bishop takes, okay, you're thinking, wow, that they're just losing a rook. Nope. You take f takes e, and it's coming with check. White cannot capture this pawn as it is guarded by the knight. Let's say now, okay, king d2, simple technique. You just go rook to d3. We can even go here, king to e1, rook to d1 check, king to f2, promote with queen, only square, and mate is to follow relatively quickly, right? You can go, not there, you can go here, there, and mate. So it's very instructive game by Eric Gaisi, and in the end game finding this technique here. So in this position, um, after bishop to f1, rook e2, and Tabatabai resigns. So yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it and you found it somewhat instructive, and that it helps with some of your endgame play and these ideas out of the opening, out of the Gucci piano, and maybe perhaps not castling as quick if you see your opponent's castle kingside. Perhaps take the little risk and go for this h6, g5, h5 ideas into e7, f8, and or g7, h6. So hope you guys enjoy it, and I'll see you guys again soon. Take care. Bye.